everyone. Uh, Glad you can all join in for our webinar, Capacity Building for Disasters as Opportunities, organized by collaboration between University of Twente, the Netherlands, Arizona State University from USA, and Resilience Development Initiatives from Indonesia. Next slide, please. Okay, this. Okay, this is, we have about 60 minutes. The first session will be introductions. There are house rules, and then it'll be a 10 minutes presentation for each of our speakers. The first speaker is Professor Joy Clancy, and the second speaker is Mrs. Elizabeth from RDI, and the third speaker will be Dr. Katja Branders, and we'll be taking Q&A after the presentation is done, but you can type in your questions in the chat box available in the right corner of your screen. And 5 minutes, last session will be a wrap up about our activities. Okay, next please. I will introduce the house rules for everyone. Number one, please mute the microphone except the presenters when the webinar starts. So use your headphones and earphones if possible, and don't forget to write your comments, your questions in the chat box. Write down your name, your affiliation, and the speaker you want to address to your opinion or questions to. We'll get back into the Q&A. We will choose the questions and address them based on the speakers. Okay. Next, please, Martin. Okay. For our first speaker, it'll be Professor Dr. Joy S. Clancy from University of Twente. Professor Clancy is Professor of Energy and Gender in Department for Governance and Technology for Sustainability at University of Twente, the Netherlands. And Professor Joy Clancy has more than 30 years of experience in the energy and development, interested in both technology and social science dimension. Okay. Professor Joy Clancy, are you ready for your first? That you're the first speaker, please. The platform is yours. I hear some noise here from. Sorry, you have. Okay, I think I hear some noise from the part, Martin. I think. Okay, Joy, you will be our first presenter, and next. The second presenter I will introduce first is Elizabeth Rianawati from Resilience Development Initiative, a senior researcher. RDI is a think tank in Indonesia. Her main interest and research is water management, sanitation, hygiene, and socio-ecological resilience. Okay, next, Martin, our third speaker from USA is Dr. Katja Branders from Arizona State University. And Dr. Katja is an assistant research professor from School of Sustainability at Arizona State University. And she has conducted teaching and researches related to sustainability change processes in normal time and disaster times. Okay, that's a brief introduction of our presenters. So I think the floor is yours, Professor Joy. Kindly give your presentation, about 10 minutes, please. And I'll remind you if it's like 5 minutes left or 2 minutes left, okay? Please. Wait, I'm having trouble hearing. Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, we don't have good audio from you. Joy, we don't have good audio from you. There was some problem. When I unmute you, you're having very much noise. It's coming from you. Maybe you have to check your microphone. I'll share my screen. I can let you see what's happening. Let me see if I could fix that.
Yang komen atau apa?
Are you?
Nanti dicapatin aja yang kasih tahu mana yang ini.
Are you?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
I think Joy has some problems with her microphone. Maybe somebody else could do the presentation first.
Okay. The next presenter will be Miss Elizabeth Rianawati. I think since we have problem with the first speaker, Miss Elizabeth will do the first presentation, and her presentation will be about community resilience, lesson learned from Indonesia. So please, Miss Elizabeth, the platform is yours. Just 10 minutes, please.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes? Okay, and how about the presentation? Is it on yet?
It's on share screen. I can see it.
Okay,
I hope everybody can see it.
So, good morning. Yeah, thank you, Ibu Ayu. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Rianawati, and I'm from Resilience Development Initiative in Indonesia, and I'm based in Bandung. And I'm going to share now about the community resilience from Indonesia. So, we have a lot of stories that we want to share, and I'm going to share you some of the lessons learned that we have did the research. So why is it important in Indonesia? Is basically Indonesia is ranked as the 34th country with very high risk disaster index, and it's actually the top 5 country who has the high number of people impacted with disaster. And annually, actually, Indonesia suffer from disaster as much as high as 2.5 US dollar million per year. So this is a huge financial setback in Indonesia. So why is it like that? It's basically because Indonesia is a meeting place of 3 tectonic plates, Indo-Australian plate, the Eurasian plate, and the Pacific plate. And these plates is colliding each other, creating earthquakes sometimes, and even tsunami, and making the volcanoes in Indonesia become active. So this is why Indonesia has a very high disaster index. But from the formula that we all know, actually disaster can only happen if the disaster hazard and the vulnerability is higher than the capacity of the community in Indonesia. So having a high disaster risk index doesn't mean that disaster will happen only when it exceeds the capacity of the Indonesian communities. So that's why it's very important for Indonesia to have a very high capacity, or in this case is community resilience. So what is community resilience? What is the components? Based on Tweak describe the community resilience to governance, risk assessment, knowledge and education, risk management, and vulnerability reduction, disaster preparedness and response. And some of the elements that keep on recurring and obvious in Indonesian community is I stated in this slide. So this is what I'm going to share it now, like governance, social capital, culture, remittance, and community-based disaster risk management. So these elements that I'm going to share, the story is based on the research that we are doing at RDI in our research station. Of course, I'm not going to tell you about all the story from this all location. I'm just going to highlight you several stories that really highlight about how the community bounced back from recurring disaster in Indonesia. So the first element will be the governance or the government. This is a very key stakeholder in disaster risk management. This is I'm going to share from research that comparing about how the government coordinate the emergency response in two locations. So the first location is West Java and the second location in West Sumatra. So these two locations is impacted, is hit by earthquake in 2009 within the same magnitude and also have the singular disaster impact. But what is different is how the local government reacts to these two disasters. So on a general level, from the observation, the local government in West Sumatra is far much better than the local government in West Java. And we did this system network analysis of what is happening in the coordination between the government and other stakeholders like international NGOs and also district agency. And we can see here that the figure in the left in the West Java, which is not so good because we can see here that there is a big distance between the leading coordinators and with other stakeholders. So this is not good, and this is why the emergency recovery is still ongoing even after 7 days. Whereas in West Sumatra, we can see here that the system network analysis is very close distance, which signifies that between the stakeholder, people communicate well and people collaborate. And in this area of West Sumatra, the emergency response can be mostly completed within 3 days. So here, the key elements is how the government react in the first place, and it could lead to the subsequent successfulness or even in the contrast. And even the government here from this figure can also coordinate the aid that is received by the peoples. The aid is not a lot in West Sumatra, but the people here from this figure really can rebuild their houses from various sources of donors. So we have here the personal cash, and we have here the old material, the family, and the new material from the donors. And from this table in the right, we can see here that the national play key roles in giving the aid. And also here the Ninik Mamak is the adat institution or the local traditional institution that because West Sumatra is the matriarchal community, is mostly by women. So here the adat institution coordinate the workforce, construction material, and social support so that the limited aid can be very effective and most of the victims can rebuild their houses. And the next Okay, so the next key point is community-based disaster risk management. So I'm talking here from two locations. The first one is in North Sumatra and the second one in East Java. So these two communities is impacted by the volcanoes. And the Badar community, we can see here is that the community themselves coordinate who will give the early warning system to the people. So we see here that once they receive the information from the central government that there will be another volcano activities, here they go spread to the villages by their motorbike to warn the people. And this is very good because actually it rises from the gaps that is in the field that actually the government cannot reach all the warning system to all the community. And in the second community is about Jangkar Kalut, is even better because in this union, the community, after experiencing how the government manage the disaster recovery, they feel dissatisfied with that, and they regroup themselves and they communicate between each other, and they even share the responsibility within the community of who will be in charge of, like instance, the first aid or the shelter for the evacuation, or even the public kitchen. So that's what happened. They group in themselves. I'm sure this is like the third element about the social capital. This is for the community that are affected by sea level rise or by climate change. Here you can see that there is a shift from the rice paddy into the fish harvest, because the sea level rise keep rising and tide keeps coming, and there's a crop failure, so the people have to change their livelihood. And another strategy is by sending their female members to oversee as a work as a domestic worker. And you can see here from the figure that the money that they obtain from the working as domestic worker overseas is used as disaster mitigation. So they raise the level of their house so that it will not be flooded, as simple as that. But this is from the social capital that the community can have. So this will be the final case that I'm give you right now. This is like how the community in Central Java, which is affected by the Mount Merapi eruption, can survive. The first year, they survive by using the aid that they receive from the government. And the second year, interestingly, is that they make this black tourism. So they make the rubble of their houses, and this is like the cars that being impacted by the volcanoes as a attraction for the tourism, and they get money for that. But in the third year, they come back to their original livelihood, that is farming and herds. So actually, I still have a lot of story from different locations, but I think I have to conclude here that in Indonesia, the community resilience is the first of all, the government should take the leading role, because as the main stakeholder, they have these resources that they can use, and they have this networking to work with international NGOs. While on the other hand, the community themselves also can be prepared and be coordinated without even have to wait from the government to take action. So this is like several best practice that is happening in Indonesia. And if you want to hear more about our research, you can go to our website, www.rdi.or.id. So thank you for your time. So back to you, Ayu.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. for the great presentation. It's a lot of work there from a major island in Indonesia, in Sumatra, and in also in Java. Right now, we go to our next presenter. Is Joy ready, Martin? Joy, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, we're going to try again. Is this better?
Yes, I think
see
it's much
Martin
better.
nodding.
It's much
Yeah,
clearer.
Okay, right.
Much clearer.
Okay.
So 10
Okay.
minutes
Sorry about that.
gender and energy. Oh, no, it's okay. Okay, the platform is yours. Right now, we go to our second presenter, Professor Joy Clancy from Twente University, about gender and energy in the context of climate change. Please, Joy, the floor is yours. Just 10 minutes.
Okay, Martin, the slides.
You can also share your screen that you have control, but I don't know.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that. I thought you were going to tell the slides.
I can do that in one moment.
Yeah, sure. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, if you didn't hear me the first time, it's a bit early for me. I'm in the UK, so I hope I'm going to sound lively and awake. I'm going to actually a lot of what I'm going to say links to the sort of things that Elizabeth has just been saying, but I'm going to talk in particular about gender and energy in the context of climate change. And I think energy, to me, is one of the forgotten elements of dealing with disaster relief, and also gender is a way of helping us do or address issues related to disasters in the context of climate change. So, right. Next slide, please. So energy is a key component of sustainable development, and it's particularly has a major role to play in solving many of the issues related to poverty. It's a basic need itself, but also in the other issues of poverty related to reduction of drudgery, of income generation, food security, environmental protection, and also the provision of social services. Energy's got a role to play in all of these. People don't say they need energy, but they say that they need to be able to do something to address all these other problems. And energy is often one of the key components of this. Next slide, please. So energy is needed for a whole range of what we would call energy services. We need process heat, which is for cooking, but also people use process heat for income generation activities, brick making, metalworking, so and also food cooking for street food, small restaurants. They also use process heat. Lighting makes work quality better, that makes people be able to extend their working day, and allows children to study at night. Irrigation for water, both for agriculture, and also we need water for household use of drinking and hygiene. There are a whole range of other issues, many of these linked to food, of grain milling, of storage of food. We could survive much longer with better provision of food over time. A lot of food is thrown away because it can't be stored in good conditions. In fact, one of the major changes in Europe and in North America America for people to survive through the winter when a lot of things were not growing was actually to be able to keep food in cool conditions in freezers or in refrigeration. So this type of facility is very important for helping people through difficult periods. And of course, there is also the issue of transport, of having sufficient fuel to be able, and vehicles to be able to transport food there, and other necessities, particularly in times of disaster. There was, in the 1980s, there's a very famous drought of famine in North Sudan, in which many people died, North Sudan, Ethiopia. But that all took place in the north of the country. In the south of the country, there was sufficient food to feed the whole country. But because there was no transport available, it was not possible to get the food to people in a timely way. Now, so in summary, then, the source of energy is going to be important to contribute to sustainable development, and also the type of energy we use is going to be very important in helping us with climate mitigation. And mainly people think about renewable energy, but I'm going to say something at the end about this. Next slide, please. Energy provides us with lots of opportunities. It's very important for income generation, for sustainable resource use, that there is the reliance on wood fuel, which is still in many rural areas and also in many towns where people use charcoal, can lead to the overuse of forest resources. But if we provide another form of energy, then that helps people to be able to manage their wood source much in a more sustainable way. Energy can provide a stimulus for new businesses. It's particularly electricity, but also increasing the amount of processed heat allows people to provide new businesses. It also enables them to run their existing businesses more efficiently. It makes it work easier. It makes businesses can work in the evening, particularly very useful for shops in marketplaces, with street lighting or lighting in the shop itself or the small restaurant. And it's if people switch to clean energy, then customers like this, and it's able to help people increase their income. Also, I'm speaking to people, many of you are in the tropics, and the climate conditions, particularly related to humidity. If you can provide people with a better working environment, then it's also good for business. But energy, also the new renewable energies, this is also creates a business opportunity itself. People are able to provide both maintenance and installation of things like solar home systems, and it's also able to provide new services to the community. Next slide, please. Martin.
Slide is on. Energy as a constraint.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. But energy is also a constraint, and which is exacerbated by climate change, and these are much worse when faced with a disaster. Without energy, we are faced with increased vulnerability, and as I was mentioning earlier about how this contributes to food insecurity by not being able to store and transport food to areas where there may be a need for supplementing locally produced and grown crops, or loss of animals due to flooding or droughts. The lack of energy also impedes the development of services, particularly for schools, for education, for health. And that's particularly if we're faced with disasters, when there is increased chance of illness through not being able to boil water, then we really need to have good health clinics which have good lighting and have refrigeration for the storage of medicines. And at the household level, having insufficient fuel to cook and boil water is also creates problems of being able to work, so to ensure your own household survival, and particularly related to boiling water for safe drinking. Next slide, please. Right, so then what you find generally in relation to disaster relief or responses to climate change, people, it's common to hear the word people and communities, but these are not homogeneous. People consist of men and women, and well, that may be stating rather the obvious, but it has very important issues related to what we are talking about. Women and men in all societies have different roles and responsibilities. And if we look in terms of rural societies, it's with subsistence crops, whereas men are responsible for cash crops. If it comes to fuel provision, it's usually women whose job it is to provide fuel for the household, particularly if it's wood fuel. But if you're switching to commercial fuels, and this is also an important point if we're thinking about moving to renewable energy, then it's men who make the final decision in the household. If we're talking about water, it's for household use, it's women, and for men, they want water for the crops and for animals. Now, these are everyday things. People do have troubles. There are droughts. There are floods. These have happened all through time, and people have their own ways of dealing with these. They have their own ways of addressing the vulnerability. But what we're going to find with climate change, and we already see that happening, Elizabeth referred to some of those already, is that climate change is going to exacerbate existing problems. It's going to make those everyday struggles with droughts and floods more frequent, longer, and more severe. And that's the issue that we are now dealing with, or faced with, and going to be faced with for some years to come. So next slide, please. Now, what we need to also think about looking at communities in terms of women and men is that these differences in responsibilities mean that people, men and women, are going to have different energy service requirements. And they both serve very important functions in maintaining of the household. So we want to make sure that both sets of needs are met. Now, women tend to have less influence on decision making, both at the household level and at the community level, also at the national government level. And there is this whole decision making about what to do, how to do it is not the same between women and men. There is also the issue in some communities of women's mobility outside the home or the community, which can be restricted. Now, interestingly, this puts both women and men at risk in terms of climate disaster. The statistics show that women tend to be more likely to drown in situations of flooding. But on the other hand, men also are at risk because of the way that that society or some societies see their roles. they are meant to be the saviors. It's their responsibility to save crops, animals, and they put themselves at much greater risk than that they would normally do. And in this context, many men lose their lives. And the easiest way for a woman to become poor is for her to become a widow. So that it's in these, when we begin to look at the way societies work, when we begin to look at the way women and men perform their different tasks, what's expected of them in their home community, then we see that there are these differences which need to be taken into account when addressing disaster relief. Next slide, please. Right. But so how are we going to respond to climate change disasters? Well, men and women are already doing this. I was interested in what Elizabeth said about her community, because that's something that has changed quite significantly. In general, in the past, it was men who've migrated. And it's that they have a better level of assets in general to address disasters. So they migrate and they send remittances home. And I think another interesting thing that has changed, which is also very important in terms of being able to respond to family needs, is the mobile phone. The mobile phone has enabled families to keep in touch with each other when they're separated by distance. And so I don't know if anybody's done any research on this, but I think that it will be interesting to see if this is not also an important factor in encouraging migration, that a family member is able to keep in touch for both sakes, for both sides. It's important to know that your family is okay, but also for the family to know that the family member is away. Now, for women, the situation is different.
So Joy, I think
yes.
Time up. Sorry, it's time up because we only have 10 minutes for the presentation, and
okay. Well, let me just say two more things.
Okay,
Can I say two more things?
Okay.
Next slide, please, Martin. What I would suggest that you do is, when looking at disaster relief, is to take a gender approach, which is to ask questions about who does experiences what and why, where and why, and that will help you define much more effective interventions. And I've put a title of a book. I didn't write this book. I don't get any money out of this, but it's free, and it's about how to mainstream gender into energy projects. If you give me the last slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What I just want to share this particularly with you. I think this is it's important. Finally, UNHCR is taking energy is as an input into disaster relief. They've set up now a separate division within UNHCR. I think this is going to be very significant for what I have been talking about. And the thing that I wanted to say about the energy choice is, while we are very focused on renewable energy for sustainability issues in the short term, I wouldn't rule out LPG. So that's, sorry, Ayu, that I went a little bit longer, but that's just that I think that's an important, those two things are an important message. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Joy Clancy, because sorry for the limit of time, and I think all of our speakers have very interesting. Right now, our speaker, Kacha from Arizona State University, and she will give the presentation. Please, Katja, are you ready about disasters as opportunities for change? And the floor is yours since we have a very limited of time. You can ask questions in the chat while the speeches or the speakers are presenting. And in the end of the presentation, we will have the Q&A. Okay, Katja, the floor is yours.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I will switch gears a little bit and speak about capacities needed for advancing change towards sustainability in normal times and disaster times. It was very nice to hear the presentations from Elizabeth, who spoke about how communities bounce back after a major shock and regain their resilience. And Joy was speaking about the very important lens of gender in development processes, especially now under climate crisis. So my proposal really is about how could a training program look like, where we build capacity for people who are interested in helping to advance change towards sustainability in normal and disaster times. There are two reasons why I picked this focus. One is my own background as an educator in sustainability science. I was involved at the Swiss Technical Institute of Technology, and then most recently at the School of Sustainability at Arizona State University in the US, which was the first school of sustainability worldwide when it was founded in 2007. And today we offer degrees in the bachelor level, master's level, and the PhD level. So I will draw on my experience of working there for the last almost 10 years. And then also the results from my own dissertation research motivated the thinking about this type of capacity building. So capacity building in sustainability science focuses on with two questions. What kind of capacities do we want to build in sustainability scholars and professionals who work on the ground? And how do we teach and learn in sustainability? With respect to the what are the key outcomes for a sustainability degree program? And here we see that there is internationally agreement on 5 types of competences that together then join together in the so-called problem-solving competence for sustainability issues. And I quickly walk through the picture at your right side. You're all familiar with systems thinking, and that's a competence that's essential to sustainability scholars. Next, there's also the need to think in structured ways about the future. So we have projections, climate projections, for example, extrapolations. We also work with scenarios, and then there are also visions of the future, where people want to live or in what kind of future people don't want to live. And that brings up the important role of values thinking competence. What are the different values and preferences, the needs and wants that people have, and how do they understand ethics and justice, and how can we account for this when we try to address the sustainability issue? And then obviously there's strategic thinking. That's the ability to get things done. How are policies being made? How do entrepreneurs resolve problems? How do we come together, civil society in problem solving? And you see, all of those 4 competences, we have the interpersonal competence as an underlying or cross-cutting theme. And that's really the ability to collaborate with people within academia, different disciplines, but even more importantly, also with people outside of academia, and to be able to co-create solutions together. And I took this idea of the interpersonal competence a step further and also teach about professional skills. So how do we communicate effectively and compassionately with each other? How do we work in teams? How do we do responsive project management, especially in very uncertain and highly dynamic times? How can we do impactful stakeholder engagement, be continuous learner, and take good care of ourselves and of others? And sustainability scholars as well, and professionals, as well as people working in the development domain or in medicine, are prone to stress-related diseases and even burnout. So the idea of taking good care of yourself in order to take care of others is another important skill to learn. With respect to how we teach and learn sustainability, we focus on the whole person learning. It's not just learning with our head, with our cognitive abilities. We also need practical manners, and we need to learn with our heart, emotional understanding of what's going on, and being competent to interact with each other is not an important point. And then there's experiential learning and collaborative learning. Then the other reason for the proposal was inspired by my research results, and my research was on disasters as opportunities for change towards sustainability. It's now very well recognized, this thesis, that disasters create opportunities for change. And sometimes change goes to the better, sometimes to the worse. And in my case, I was interested in the people who pursued opportunities for sustainability. How did they do it in the midst of devastation and loss? And what changes could they achieve with respect to sustainability? I had two cases, one in New Zealand and one in Indonesia, and that's also where I met Joy Clancy. And I had the opportunity to work with the Resilience Development Institute, who were my research counterpart. So more specifically, what were the findings from my research that motivated the proposal? First, I found people seeking change towards sustainability post-disaster, but throughout the disaster recovery phase. And in Aceh, Indonesia, I was there 10 years after the 2004 tsunami, and there were still people who worked within sustainability issues as a consequence of post-disaster efforts. Second, people use very specific capacity to leverage sustainability. And across the sample of my interview respondents, I saw that they have capacities that they employ to see opportunities for change towards sustainability, for seizing those opportunities and then trying to introduce changes into rules and regulations, into products and services. And thirdly, the sustainability efforts of those change agents led to mixed outcomes. There were successes, but then there were also setbacks and even regress because of structural constraints and lack of awareness. But the point I like to make here is the linkages between the sustainability efforts and the SDGs, because we could see that the change agents' efforts contribute to at least one or several sustainability development goals. So I looked a little bit closer into those findings. We have an emerging community of practice that's people who perceive opportunities for change towards sustainability post-disaster. However, there's a general lack of awareness. So my question was, how can we better support the emergence of those sustainability change agents post-disaster? And how can we support their effectiveness in really achieving change? And what I saw was that universities themselves play an important role in supporting change towards sustainability in post-disaster recovery processes. They changed their curriculum, they changed their mission even. That's the University of Tulane, a very prominent example. And when I then compared how we teach in disaster risk management, how we teach in sustainability science, and what the change agents or my respondents on the ground reported, I saw that there's actually a great overlap and complementarity. So you see the complementarities, for example, with respect to the focus. Disaster risk management looks at disaster time, whereas sustainability science focuses more on normal times. These are a little bit generalizations, but just I want to get the general point across. Disaster risk management trains students in managing disasters, and in sustainability, we train students to navigate long-term sustainability transitions. Some focus on managing logistics, human and other resources during disaster risk, during the disaster response and recovery. In sustainability, we manage towards certain outcomes. Both have a blind spot, sustainability on the one hand side and disaster recovery on the other hand side. But then I also saw, when I looked into the syllabi and the degree programs, that there's actually overlap. In sustainability, I talked about the sustainability competences, and I noticed that these issues that I was talking about, systems thinking, values thinking, etc., interpersonal competence, also emerge in disaster risk management curricula. And obviously, the overlap on hands-on learning and the ability to collaborate with various people in order to co-create solutions. So I translated this then in a pathway approach to a curriculum, to a course or training, and it starts with for students to bring the world in, familiarize students with these complex post-disaster situations, by telling them stories of sustainability-oriented disaster recovery processes. You can bring in guest speakers who speak from their own experience and let students watch videos and read newspaper articles, etc., to really evoke an emotive response. Then students can immerse themselves into real-world recovery processes through field visits. And here we can learn a lot from a variety of universities who have done so, most notably the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. Next, you bring students back into the classroom and they explore actually scenarios of recovery processes towards sustainability. And here David Alexander from the UK, who is the editor of the Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction, he has written very nicely about this very powerful tool of scenario development to design and test sustainability-oriented recovery interventions. And then lastly, students over these three activities had the opportunity to build contact and relationships with various groups engaged in sustainability and disaster recovery. And then they can work through workshop courses or studio courses on co-creating solutions. And their universities from Japan, the US, and Europe have made experiences with such collaborations where students support sustainability-oriented disaster recovery processes. So that's the background that really made me think about a proposal. Can we together as an emerging community co-create a course or a training program that would support learners and to accelerate change towards sustainability in normal times and disaster times? And could we integrate in these efforts the goals of sustainable development, the SDGs, disaster risk reduction, more prominently since Sendai, and obviously climate resilience? Preliminary work with regard to this proposal is in progress. We will be teaching a seminar at Arizona State University, and we have discussions about it with Joy Clancy and with Elizabeth and other people from RDI. And today we are happy to speak with you, and hopefully we can receive your comments. If we don't have enough time, please don't hesitate to share your ideas, comments, and interest with me. You see my email address, katja.brundis@avcu.edu. Thank you so much for joining us. I give it back.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Katja. Interesting about supporting learning activities and course creation and collaboration on your topic. I'm sorry for the very short time we have. Each presenter have presented. Maybe we can take the Q&A now. We have about 7 minutes. I think that's enough time. Let me see. There's a question for Katja. Can you please open your chat box? You can see there's a question for you. It's from Elizabeth about Katja, who you suggest to be involved in the training program, the government officials, or maybe do you have in mind who will be involved in the course or training program for sustainability?
Yeah, so obviously there are a variety of stakeholders who play an important role in helping to advance sustainability in disaster and normal times, and the government is one of them. And we have heard about the empirical evidence from Elizabeth's presentation. And so definitely the government should play an important role. We need to learn about the government as an actor, and it would also be nice to have guest speakers who can speak from their experience, because what we see from the literature is that it's really important to recognize and build and strengthen a community of practitioners or a community of practice, that is people who are experienced with advancing, in this case, sustainability in post-disaster context. And government representatives have also shown up in my study as being very important to link communities to resources available by the government. And I'm sure Joy Clancy would confirm this, that in order to provide energy provision and support in gendered ways, we need to work with the government as a main provider as well.
Okay, and the next one is for Joy. Should we mainstream the energy dependency in remote areas to increase the disaster resilience of people? Joy, what do you think about mainstreaming energy dependency?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. So thanks for that. Yes, I think, and this is the challenge because remote areas, it's expensive to deliver energy to them.
Yeah.
And I think this is really where we need to think about decentralized systems. And I think one of the difficulties with energy is that often local authorities don't have the experience of energy service delivery or energy resources delivery. And I would include those in Katja's training course, that it's not, when she talks about government, I think it's the different layers of government. So it's both central and the lower levels of government. And this is particularly an issue, I know, for Indonesia because of the decentralization policy. But a number of other countries are doing the same thing. Kenya, certainly, and I think Uganda, Tanzania. So a number of countries around the world are going to these lower levels and putting these new responsibilities on them. So most definitely, I think that these remote areas, they need that resilience building to help them cope, because they're often cut off in times of disaster. So if they are more self-sufficient, then they will be, then we increase their resilience.
Okay, it's still interesting, Joy. We still have time for more questions. I would like maybe to ask her about the gender part in here, especially in communities. Maybe Miss Elizabeth can ask in Indonesia and in DRR training program in communities. I think the issue of gender and energy is sometimes overlooked during the training session about DRR in the community in Indonesia. Maybe Ms. Elizabeth can share about the communities. Okay. Elizabeth, please.
Gender and communities in disaster, Ibu Ayu?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, actually in Indonesia.
From your seat.
Yeah, in Indonesia, actually there is still a lot of gap in protecting the women and the children, especially during disaster. So we are actually doing a research on that, like how to minimize the disaster risk for women and children. And for whoever who is interested to join our research, please do contact us. So up until now, it's very few best practice available for actually protecting women and children in disaster affected communities. So yeah, so sorry about that. So that's my observation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Elizabeth. We're running short. We have how many? 1 minute, I think. It's 2:59 in my time. I do a short wrap up maybe because we only have 1 minute. So the first Ms. Elizabeth talked about communities in Indonesia and that government take the leading practice activity in DRR in Indonesia, and next followed by Joy about the gender and energy, that energy services delivery should be made specific for the gender needs, and also from Katja, education and curriculum for change and sustainability. I think these are all very important issue, and we can work or collaborate together on this. This is the first time we're doing this webinar platform and capacity building for disasters. And should you have more questions, please feel free to send us the email, maybe to RDI, and we can follow through your questions to our speakers then. So I think I'm going back to Martin or Joy or Katja. Do you have any last remarks before we close the session?
I just wanted to say, Ibu Ayu, thank you very much for hosting the session and for doing such a wonderful job at walking us through this hour. And thank you, Martin, for your technical support in the background. And thanks everyone for joining us and being with us there. It's always hard in a webinar to participate actively, but we hope we could all inspire you in some way or another. But thank you everyone for making this happen.
Okay, thank you, Katja. Joy, any words, please?
Well, also, yes, thank you for me. Thank you, Ayu, for keeping us on time, and Martin for dealing with all the technical issues, and everybody who participated. I think this is a start, and we'd like to do this again in the future. And be interesting to hear from people who've been listening if there are particular topics that you would like us to cover. And I hope next time we can also get UNHCR involved as well.
Yes, thank you, Joy. Martin, I think this is we end this webinar. Thank you from RDI, for all the participants and presenters, and we hope to see you again on our next webinar. Okay, see you, Martin. I go back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully this was a good experience. I did a recording for the session, and will make it. I'll send it to you so you can distribute it to the other people who could not make it. And we evaluate the system, and maybe you could continue using this system for your project. Or we could maybe switch to another system. It's up to you. So I think we'll evaluate this, and we'll see what the future will bring. So you got my contact details, and you can contact me for further initiatives. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Martin. I think we end this webinar. Thank you all for the participation and contribution. Bye from Indonesia.
Bye.
Bye bye from Germany.